Hi guys, this is Pokert, coach of the Phoenix Jolts in the new Littleroot Lessons Draft League Fair and Square Edition. Today we have my Week 2 match versus Mocha, the coach of the Midtown Metagross. He has a very dangerous team as seen here on the left, Metagross and Dusclops being the most straightforward strategy here. He can Trick Room and Shadow Sneak his own Metagross to activate a weakness policy. He also has potential Sucker Punch from both Pincurchin and the Absol here into the Metagross to activate a policy, or even into the Raichu if he felt like it. Then he has a Torracat for Fake Out support, and the combination of Electric Terrain with Raichu and Pincurchin, which is very scary, both in the sense of speed control on both ends, with Trick Room not being an option due to the Pincurchin being very slow, and then Raichu will outspeed everything on my team. But since I had a very bulky Dragapult, I decided to just lead it right away into this match with the Crocodile, which felt like it should have done well into most of his lead options. He ends up going for the best one he could have done here, I think, which is the Torracat and the Dusclops. He's able to fake out the Crocodile and just guaranteed set up Trick Room. Even though I'm at -1, I decided that a Shadow Ball plus a Max Crocodile, Max Darkness into the Dusclops is enough to pick up a KO, so I go for that play. If he stays in with Dusclops, he goes down, no Trick Room, and I'm able to get a Moxie boost onto my Crocodile. He smartly switches out the Dusclops into Absol, which is going to be able to take this double up pretty well. The best case there for me was a Torracat fake out on the Crocodile and a Shadow Ball plus Max Darkness double up being able to KO the Dusclops, but he smartly recognizes that he needs the Dusclops for later on in the game, so he decides to switch it out, not be threatened by both of these Dark and Ghost types, which would do super effective damage. And now the Absol is very threatening into my Dragapult, especially. Shadow Ball does decent damage into Absol. And at -1, the Absol is definitely able to take this Max Darkness, which is a resisted hit. It doesn't do a ton of damage, and now Torracat is free to do whatever it wants. The worst case here would have been Parting Shot into my Crocodile, but he ends up hoping to just take my Dragapult out of the game with a Wisp, but since my Dragapult is special, which I sadly have to reveal right away, the burn doesn't do too much for him besides just a little chip damage. Given that he switched out his Dusclops, I do understand his non-fake out play, just going for the Wisp right away. If I was a physical Dragapult and I maxed there, hoping to KO the Dusclops, I wouldn't have gotten off anyways, so the Wisp was a very good idea on his end. At this point, I'm already kind of concerned because my Crocodile's at -1. He can -2 it by Parting Shotting or just hard switching. So I decided to go for the double up into the Torracat, assuming it's Sash. Absol is at this point just free to take a KO into my Dragapult now. However, there's not too much I can do about it, so I just decide to hope for any type of like Metagross switch in, or maybe even a Dusclops, Shadow Ball the Torracat, just take it out before I can Wisp my Crocodile or Parting Shot it. I'll at least get a Moxie boost here, but in hindsight, Darknessing the Torracat, given that it was most likely to be Sash, was a pretty safe play. And even if the Torracat wasn't Sash for whatever reason and the Shadow Ball was able to KO it outright, Darkness into Absol should have done pretty decent damage as we saw before, and leave it at -2 SpDef, so Dragapult will be able to easily clean it up, or my Volcarona that's in the back. He ends up Night Slashing my Dragapult here. The critical hit, Night Slash is a boosted critical hit move, but given the fact that he got it right away, I have to start thinking about whether the Absol Scope lines with Super Luck, or maybe just one or the other, but here I am considering whether or not to switch in Volcarona or Bouffalant. I am going for Bouffalant, considering that this would be better in Trick Room, but in hindsight, a Darkness plus Volcarona attack would have had a better chance of KOing the Dusclops as opposed to what I do here, which is Darkness plus Iron Head on the Bouffalant. While the Darkness and a Lash Out from Bouffalant would have most likely been able to KO the Dusclops, it still doesn't put me in a great position because my max ends. And then I'm still only at neutral, and the Metagross is going to come in with 3 turns of max, and the Absol's still around, obviously, to do damage. But since the Absol's so low, I feel like I can take it out with Volcarona at some point. Close combat crit does a ton of damage, and the Crocodile bring us very low. At this point, I do have to consider that it's most likely to be Scopeland's Super Luck. Iron Head sadly not enough to KO the Dusclops, just barely, so switching in Volcarona in the first place would have been better, or even just going for a high horsepower with the miss chance. I think slightly more base power would have given a better chance to KO the Dusclops there, and KOing the Dusclops was probably on the out end of that game. With Trick Room up, Bouffalant is slower than Metagross, but not able to do it much because if he has Wisp, it's instantly going to not do anything for the rest of the game. He's able to Nightshade my Crocodile for a KO at this point because of how much we took from the close combat. And even KOing Absol here is not going to do anything because he can Pain Split the Bouffalant. So instead of protecting the Crocodile from a potential Nightshade KO, I just decided I kind of had to go for something here and read the Pain Split into the Bouffalant, KO the Absol, and hope that somehow Darkest Lair was able to KO the Dusclops here, but given how much the max move did, it was clearly unlikely without a crit. It is able to bring it down pretty low, but again, it's going to be able to Pain Split whenever it feels like it. My Volcarona in the back is going to be slower than both of these in Trick Room, so the Metagross with 3 turns is going to be a definite issue, even if I protects on everything. Reading the protects, not going to be able to help a whole lot because Crocodile is going to go down to a nice Nightshade. Here I hope that the Darkest Lariat is able to connect into the Metagross by some miracle, and then just get a little bit of chip damage on it. Hopefully he doesn't end up KOing the Volcarona somehow after this is done, or maybe doesn't KO the Bouffalant in a high horsepower. Fury Dance is able to KO the Metagross by... At this point he does have a pretty simple win con, especially given that Metagross is actually able to KO the Bouffalant with Steel Spike here. And then this turn he does end up going for the Nightshade on the Crocodile, taking it out. High horsepower misses into Dusclops. I would have been quite interested to see how much that did, if that was enough to take out the KO, but that was kind of the reason I didn't go for it in the first place. If it didn't instantly go down to a Steel Spike, it might have mattered, but given that Metagross was at +1 defense and all I had was Volcarona left in the back, which is very likely to die even if Dusclops was down, all I could do here was hope that for whatever reason he wasn't able to KO my Volcarona, and the high horsepower maybe crits before his Metagross moves, and then Fury Dance is able to take it out. Most likely needing like a couple crits to get to that point. But at this point, game 1 is pretty much over. I'm not able to stall out his Trick Room, and even if I could, the Dusclops is just going to be able to heal off all that damage with Pain Split. Here all I can see is what move he's going to go for. Given that he went for Max Quake here, makes me feel that he doesn't have Rockfall, but that could be a wrong assumption on my end, and he just went for a Quake to get a Spadef boost, and then maybe not reveal the Rockfall for whatever reason. Maybe later on it would have been useful to keep the Rockfall a secret, but good game 1, and then we'll just move on to the second game. So this time, I initially assumed that I had Helping Hand on the Jolteon, which was the last minute change I made, but I ended up just going back to Yawn on that slot, which in hindsight wasn't very useful against his Electric Terrain team, but since he didn't bring them out, it was possible to stall out his Metagross max if he went for a turn 1 with a Yawn, so I just said go for Jolteon. If he went for the same lead, I'd be able to do the same thing where I max the Jolteon, this time not at -1, and I'm able to go for a max Phantasm off a Shadow Ball, and then Shadow Ball to Dragon Ball again. Able to take out a Dusclops, which he doesn't seem to be able to give up very easily, so this was possibly going to be difficult for me. He ends up going for an interesting mix-up here with an Absol instead of the Torracat. Absol is clearly a pain for the Dragon Ball to deal with, but at this point, I'm able to just go for the Shadow Ball Phantasm play. His best switch into Phantasm is out on the field already. Even if Torracat comes in, that gets an annoying Intimidate out of the way for my Crocodile in the back. So I feel pretty good about going for the Shadow Ball and Phantasm play. Even if Dusclops went for a ally switch here, I think the Phantasm plus Shadow Ball double up is enough to do a ton of damage to Absol. We saw before that he has a crit Absol, so Night Slash is going to do a ton of damage into Drag Bolt, but I did have a max HP set, so I felt pretty good about, even if he ally switches and gets a Night Slash off, the damage into Absol is going to be very good, and then even if it doesn't KO, I should be able to live a crit Night Slash, which I do on very low health, but the most important thing, like I said before, is just to keep Drag Bolt alive. Any of the mons that I have alive, as long as Trick Room isn't up, I'll be able to just go for a, double up into the Metagross, hit it with as many attacks as possible, as long as I can get the partners out of the way. And I have, say, 2 or 3 mons that are able to hit it with super effective damage, especially the stab ones, so at this point the position is pretty decent. I want to get rid of the Absol as soon as possible, because I had to cover a Sucker Punch or a Night Slash into the Drag Ball KOing, and the Drag Ball is pretty much needed to have max turns to be able to KO the Metagross. Useful max turns. If Dragon Ball goes down here right away, I definitely have a hard time dealing with the Metagross maxed. So, to cover the Sucker Punch play, I go out into the Volcarona and just max guard. This was pretty painful to do at the time, but if he was running Sucker Punch, which I don't think he was, given that he doesn't go for it right away here, the Sucker Punch plus just attacking with a Max Quake, say, from the Metagross into the Jolteon would have been pretty safe on his end, so he ends up just going for Protect, and Night Slashes into my Max Guard, which is perfect for me. Thankfully, the Volcarona didn't take any damage coming in, but I felt even if it did, I would still be able to Rage Powder a Sucker Punch away, most crucially, and KO the Absol the next turn. Now that my Volcarona's at full health, I can just go for a Rage Powder, Redirect, whatever Absol wants to do. Since it didn't Sucker Punch, I possibly could have just Bug Buzz and KO'd the Absol, but I still wanted to cover Sucker Punch this turn because I felt like if I just die to Sucker Punch, it's immediately becomes much more difficult. So I wanted to get one more good max turn off, have the Dragon Ball for Metagross later on, and I shouldn't really be able to die to a Absol attack here. So even if the Metagross maxed, I activate his policy with a Phantasm and doesn't KO, it should do plenty of damage for the Crocodile and Volcarona if it stays alive, or Jolteon with the Shadow Ball plus Crocodile attack to finish it off later on. But he ended up making a good switch into Torracat. Not able to intimidate anything, but it is able to take a max move and survive on Focus Sash. The Night Slash does a ton of damage into Volcarona again, super strong Absol. But I'm crucially able to live with Volcarona, and Absol ends up getting burned. Pretty fortunate Flame Body activation there, but I had a play here of just switching Crocodile into the Drag Bolt slot and protecting from Fake Out, which was pretty safe. So even if he wasn't burned, the worst he could do is probably Night Slash into the Crocodile. I don't think it was likely it was going to close combat the Ghost type. I just switch out the Dragon Ball into Crocodile and protect the Volcarona. Losing Crocodile there was also potentially okay because I'd still have a 3v3 with a Torracat at 1 HP, and then I could easily KO that with a Shadow Ball from Dragon Ball before it's able to do anything, and just Bug Buzz the Absol for KO. But with the burn, the Night Slash is not going to do anything in Crocodile. I'm able to KO it this turn with the Bug Buzz. Even if he wasn't burned, it did more damage than Crocodile. The HP on Crocodile wasn't really important at this point. All I needed was to KO the 1 HP Torracat. Darkest Lariat covers the Metagross switch in. So the Torracat gets down, and luckily I get a Moxie boost out of this, which was going to be very important later on to deal more damage onto the Metagross. And then thankfully the Bug Buzz is also able to KO the Absol. So at this point I have a 4v1. 3 super effective stab moves into their Metagross, even with 3 turns of max. This time I'm feeling pretty decent about it, and then even Jolteon will be able to most likely clean up with a Shadow Ball after all this damage is going to come out from the Volcarona and Crocodile, which are both going to be faster than Metagross, especially the +1 Lariat. And the most he could have done here was probably Hailstorm, KO the Crocodile, and hope that the hail damage was enough to KO the Volcarona. But even if it was, I'd still get 2 attacks off into the Metagross. Worst case, he has some berry, and it does about like 50%. With the double up, Life Orb Shadow Ball plus the Jolteon Shadow Ball should be able to KO it after that, and then he shouldn't really be able to take out 2 Mongs at once. But Dark Slariat ends up doing like about 50%. Reveals the Weakness Policy, which didn't get revealed game 1. And Fire Dance is actually able to take out the Metagross. Very strong Volcarona with the Charcoal this week, so that was very good to know that the Max Metagross would go down to that combination. I think even if Crocodile was at, say, neutral from an Intimidate or -1 or anything, without the Moxie Boost, the Shadow Balls from the back would be able to take down that Metagross. So, fortunately, we don't even have to bring out the back ones at that point. This game, I decided to do what I meant to do the second game, which was to Helping Hand Phantasm with the Dragon Bolt. This time I have a Helping Hand on the Gardevoir for sure, and then this covers for the Fake Out play, it covers for any sort of Absol lead like he did last game, because the Absol is going to be scared off by the Fairy type Gardevoir. And I have a Focus Sash on it, so it's not going to go down to just 1 hit. So I end up leading Gardevoir and Dragon Bolt. The Volcarona Crocodile back again just because it was so good at dealing with the Metagross in the end. Even if I can just get a bit of damage onto it, I should be able to take it out with a Dark Slariat, Fire Wrath, or Fire Dance. Because they'll both be faster. The most important thing is preventing Trick Room here. And then here my Gardevoir is able to Trace Intimidate, which is pretty nice. Not the most useful, but it is better than tracing Frisk because we've already seen his Torracat as Focus Sash, and then Dusclops is most likely EVOA based on how it took the Phantasm before. Now I can go for the Helping Hand, bypass any Fake Out. The worst that Torracat can do here is go for a damage into Gardevoir, and the worst that Dusclops slot can do here is go for something like High Switch, or a switch into the Absol, which he did before. I think at this point he feels safe. He probably expected something like Imprison on Gardevoir. Luckily I was carrying the Helping Hand, which is why I was able to safely lead it against the possible Fake Out and Trick Room. So with Helping Hand, we're definitely going to be able to KO with the Dusclops with the Phantasm. Even if he Ally Switch or something, I would have got the Dusclops down to Sash, and then there's no more risk of Fake Out. Dusclops going down, very big threat out of the way in terms of its support options, being able to activate the Metagross and set up speed control for it with Trick Room. Right away, feeling pretty good about the turn 1. And say Absol switch into the Dusclops, I think the Helping Hand Phantasm would have done plenty of damage, and the Moonblast at this point is going to be able to scare it off, and then at that point you would just have to switch in, say, Dusclops or something, but I can always have the Helping Hand Phantasm play as long as the Dry Bolt and the Gardevoir is still alive, which at this point is going to be pretty difficult for the Torracat Absol combination to take out either of these. He goes for a very good play here of protecting the Absol. The Absol here without Trick Room speed control is going to be pretty necessary to take out the Dragon Bolt, which is the biggest threat into Metagross. I had a couple more threats into Metagross, but if he was able to get rid of, say, 1 or 2 of them, Gardevoir is most likely not doing much damage into Metagross, even if it's something like Mystical Fire. This is probably his best play to protect and Parting Shot the Gardevoir. Hope to survive a -1 Moonblast, but I was curious about the calc out for the game because we got Parting Shotted, so a -1 Moonblast from Gardevoir should be able to guaranteed knock out a Absol as long as they don't have a ton of HP investment. And even if they have HP and special defense investment, it becomes a roll and not a great one in their favor. So yeah, based on like the damage that we saw in the previous games, I felt like Absol probably pretty attack invested. Possibly some bulk, but the Moonblast was more likely to KO than not. So at this point I'm wondering if I should like read into the obvious Metagross Protect. I feel like it's unlikely that he just gives me the Metagross with a Helping Hand Phantasm possible. So it feels like all I can do here is max guard and try to KO the Dragon Ball with a Night Slash or Protect, which he ends up going for here. So I end up going for the Moonblast on Absol without knowing the calc, which is probably not the best decision, but based on last game, we were able to survive a Night Slash crit from the Absol, so I felt like we should survive any Absol attack on the Dragapult. If he ends up taking out Gardevoir, that's actually pretty okay because I can bring in something that threatens the Metagross as well, and then Moonblast actually just able to KO the Absol here. So that brings out Torracat as his last mon. And Metagross took way too much damage through Protect, so I feel pretty good about just being able to go for the same play again of Helping Handing and this time just Shadow Balling the Metagross. Possibly not KOing, but didn't need a KO with our speed control on our end. The Crocodile and Volcarona are going to be faster than Metagross, as we've seen before. Since he didn't get up Trick Room, I can just go for the Helping Hand, prevent any type of Fake Out from going to the Gardevoir, and increase the damage of Shadow Ball. And he ends up forfeiting here, which was understandable because he would have needed some very good plays on his end to take out the 4 mons on my team. So, very good games to Mocha. He played very well, actually, especially in Game 1, obviously, but even in Game 2 and Game 3, it made it super difficult to try to get a win there. I just ended up having a good lead that I didn't necessarily recognize until the 3rd game of just being able to go for a Helping Hand and attacking the Dusclops. Even any sort of switch, considering he didn't have his Drampa, would have been very good there. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. We didn't have a ton of time to prep this week because of scheduling issues, so I ended up doing a post commentary for this game. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and thank you.